Welcome to this quick start video for InDesign. This is by no means a detailed look at InDesign. It is intended to give beginners an overview of the basics of creating documents, working with pages, and adding content. At the end of this video, you should have a much clearer idea of how to go about using InDesign. I have to say that out of the graphic design oriented Adobe applications of Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign, InDesign is probably the one that gets the least hype. You could call InDesign the unsung hero of the design process. It is one of my favorite applications and probably the one I use the most, usually for several hours per day. While Photoshop and Illustrator are exciting creative tools, InDesign is the workhorse that brings everything together into a complete document. Before we begin the layout and assembling of our document, let me quickly talk you through what it is. I want to do a 4-page brochure on the subject of tattooing. I have sourced some images and done some Photoshop editing and some Illustrator work. So let's switch across to our Finder and let's have a look at what assets I have here. I have some Illustrator files. I have some images, JPGs, as well as a Photoshop document. I have a text file, and I have a font. So I'm going to switch to Illustrator first and just show you what I have here. This is just a masthead that I created very quickly here in Illustrator using the font that I found, which I think is quite a kind of tattoo-y type of font. I also have a kind of tattoo design in white and also in black. I have this little sticker that I created, just claim your free inked iPhone app and design your own tribal tattoo, and then a barcode. So that's all the Illustrator stuff, all the vector stuff. Let's switch across to Photoshop. And I have this photo which I have processed in Photoshop to look like this for my cover. I've also sized it so that it is the appropriate size for an A4 cover. So that would be 300 pixels per inch resolution and the correct width and height. And then I have this other photo which I've processed for a double page spread background, and I've also used a layer mask to remove the background here so that I can use this with some text in a double page spread. Then I have my text, which is basically just copied and pasted into a text document, which I'll use later. And that is basically it. So we have our images, we have our masthead, we have our barcode, we have some graphics, and we have the text. And that's everything we need to be able to get going with this document. Normally in a real-world scenario, I would have also done some scamps or rough layouts in a sketchbook. It is quite essential as a designer to not just dive into InDesign and start working, but instead to sit with a pencil, ruler, and paper and do some rough layouts to help guide you. It is a proven fact that this process opens up your creative channels and allows you freedom of thought. Normally you would work out the format, the grid and column system from these rough sketches. It is well worth doing some internet research on using grids and columns in layouts. This will improve the quality of your work. Okay, so we're going to create our new document here. So I can click on New, or I can just go to File, New Document, or use the shortcut Command N on the Mac, Control N on Windows. And this will bring up your new document dialog box. I'm going to click on Preview so that I can actually see the document changing as I need to. Now the first thing I see is that my units of measure are set here to picas, and that is not what I want. I want millimeters. So I'm going to cancel out of here, and I'm going to go to my InDesign Preferences. On Windows you can find this under Edit Preferences, and then to Units and Increments. And I'm going to change my ruler units, horizontal to millimeters and vertical to millimeters. And now when I go back to new document, I'm now working in millimeters, which is what I'm more comfortable working in. So from the top, we need to make sure that our intent is set to print, because this is a print document that I'm going to be creating. That means that InDesign will handle everything as CMYK. Then number of pages, I'm going to put in 4 here. If you want to add pages later, you can always do that in InDesign, but I know that this is going to be 4 pages. So 4 facing pages, yes, because it's a brochure. Size, I'll keep this easy and stick to A4. Portrait. And then columns, I'm going to go for a 6-column layout, and I'm going to set the gutter to 4 millimeters. Then my margins, I'm going to unlink so that I can set different values, and I'm going to go for a top margin of 30, a bottom margin of 25, an inside margin of 30, and an outside margin of 20. For bleed and slug, I'm going to set the bleed to 2 millimeters. Some people think that's too small and would go for 3, 4, or 5, but I'm just used to setting it to 2. The best thing to do is to check with your printer first to see what kind of bleed they require. And then the slug, I'm just going to set a bottom slug of 10 millimeters. And then I'm done, so I'm going to press OK. And now I can go to my workspace, and here you'll see in my pages panel I have my 4-page layout. It's important to note that page 1 and page 4 will actually be a double page spread, back and front cover. So even though they're split here, they won't be split when the document is printed. It's just that InDesign treats pages as you would read them, so 1, 2, 3, 4 flowing from first page to fourth page. So the next stage is to actually start creating your layout, and you'll see here that I'm on page 1. To switch to other pages, I double click on them. I also have this section above my pages here for master pages, and by default I have a none master page and an A master page. Now you do not have to work in master pages in InDesign. However, when you're working in certain workflows, it makes sense to do that. So I'm going to cover working with master pages just so that you understand the process. So what a master page is it's kind of a set of design elements that you're going to apply to certain pages for 2 reasons. One, so that you can have a consistency of look across pages, and also so that it helps you with quickly designing certain things. So for the cover of this, I'm going to create a new master page. So I'm going to go to my options for my pages panel and choose new master. I'll call it cover, and I will just set it to 1 page and A4 and OK. So there's my master page called cover. So on this master page I'm going to create some design elements that are going to be the same on every issue of this brochure. So for example, a masthead. So I'm going to take my rectangle frame tool and I'll draw a rectangle across there, and I'll place Command or Control D, and I will choose my masthead, and okay, that's fine. And then I'm going to work with layers as well. So this will be a graphics layer, because even though it looks like text, it's actually an Illustrator graphic. Then I'm going to create another layer underneath that and call it images, and another layer above that and call it text. So now on the images layer, I'm going to take my rectangle frame tool and I'm going to draw a rectangle the full size of my bleed, because remember that all graphics must bleed off your page if they touch the edge of the page. And just to remind me that there is a graphic there, because sometimes it's hard to see this little X running through this box, I'm going to give it a fill of black with a 20% tint. I just like to do that to remind me there is actually something there. So this is a placeholder box, because for each issue we will have a different graphic, so we don't want to actually put the graphic in here in the master page. Okay, then under graphics I'm going to make a rectangle, not a rectangle frame, just a rectangle to go behind this masthead, and I'm going to fill that with paper, which is basically white, and set the opacity. Oops, let me just undo that. Paper, and then set the opacity. Okay, something's going wrong here. Let me just. Sorry, not the opacity. Yes, the opacity, not the tint. Okay, opacity to 75. And I'll also arrange it to the back. And I'll take the stroke off. Okay, so that's just a little screen in the background there. Then I'm going to switch to my text layer, and I'm just in the habit of locking layers when I'm not working on them. So I lock the graphics and images layer. And in my text layer, I'll take my type tool, and I will drag out a text area, and then I'm going to type in there issue XX, because this is a placeholder, it's not the actual issue, and then month, year, and then recommended price. Let's put it in dollars. Let's say $2.50. Okay, and then I'm going to format that. So I'll select that, go to my character formatting, and I'll just choose Helvetica regular, and we'll set the size to 14. Okay, then I'll double click on the corner of that text frame to resize it down to there. Then I'm going to lock my text layer, unlock my graphics layer, and in there I'm going to place, so Command or Control D, and I'm going to place my barcode, and I'll put that there and just nudge it into position with my arrow keys. Okay, then also in the images layer, I'm going to create a graphic frame for an image that runs 2 columns wide. So I'm using my column system here, and I'll fill that with black with a different percentage tint, so maybe 30%. Okay, and then I'll duplicate this just by alt dragging, and I'll make another frame over here for another graphic. So this is the process of creating a master page, and what I'm going to do is fast forward here, because this video is going to be too long if I have to do it for every page. I'm going to fast forward so that I've actually done the master pages for all of the pages in this brochure. Okay, so I've spent a little bit of time creating master pages for this document, and you can see that I now have 3 master pages: a B cover, a C spread, and a D back. The A master I don't need anymore because I'm not going to use it, so I'll just double click on that and press the little dustbin to remove it. So I've only got the 3 masters that I want to work on. So that's the cover, which consists of placeholder boxes for my graphics, a placeholder box for background image. I've created some text and formatted it. This is just placeholder text, so it just says headline 1, headline 2, a little graphic next to that, and notice the way all the stuff is in the correct layers. The graphics are in the graphics layer and so on. Then my masthead and a background white box and some text there. If I go to the spread master page, you can see that what it is a large image in the background, place for a graphic. This is just placeholder text that says strapline using that special font that I downloaded. Same here, heading, the byline, the deck, which is basically the intro to the article, and then the formatting of the article. But this is just placeholder text, it's not the actual text. And then for the back is just a simple layout, place for a graphic, place for a pull quote, and the rest of the text in there. Okay, so now to apply these master pages to my actual pages. So I'm going to drag the cover master page onto page 1, thumbnail. I'm going to drag the C spread onto page 2 and to page 3, and then the back onto page 4. So those master pages have now been applied here, and I'm just going to save this and and then so what you have is you always have these master pages to fall back on if you need to apply them to other pages or if you need to do the next issue. But now the next step is to populate our actual pages with content. So I'm going to double click on page 1, and here's the master page. And so what I need to do is first of all put a graphic in this background here, or at least an image. So the way that you do that, because notice the way I can't select anything at the moment because all of this stuff is linked to the master page and I can only select it and change it on the master page. So what I need to do is release it, which is called overriding. I need to override this item so that I can use it locally on page 1 and it loses its connection with the master page. So to do that, on the Mac you hold down Shift and Command and you click, and on Windows that would be Shift and Control. Okay, so I've just clicked on the text frame, so I'm going to undo that and I'm going to Shift Command click so that I get that background box. With the background box selected, I'm going to Command or Control D to place, and I'm going to choose my cover photo. Okay, and I'm just going to right click and say fitting, fill frame proportionally to make sure it fits properly. Okay, then up here is my text for the issue. So once again I'm going to Shift Command click to override that and then zoom in, and I'm going to edit that. So I'm just going to say issue 14, month March, year 2017. Okay, and then these two graphics also need to be overridden, so Shift Command click and again there, and then this one select Command or Control D and let's place the white Gothic wings, and we'll set the fitting to fit content proportionally, and then I'll also remove that gray background. And then this one is going to be that little competition, so Command D, and once again fitting, fit content proportionally, remove the gray background, and I'm also going to rotate this a little bit just to make it look a little bit more interesting. Okay, now with the text, well, let's do these little graphic boxes first. So Shift Command click and click, and I want to change those to a more blue color, and let's set the tint up to 80. Okay, so it's more subtle. And then the headlines, Shift Command click to override, and then I can go in here and I can change these headlines. So okay, and then this one, okay, so there's my little headings, and I'm going to just press W to check out in preview mode. Okay, and I'm happy with that. And that's what I would do, is I would continue going through to pages 2 and 3 and continue to edit, add the graphics, edit the text, so that I end up with a finished product. So I'm going to switch to the finished product, and you can see that's the cover. And if I go to the inside, you can see that I've got Express Yourself, Play It Smart with Body Art, and this background graphic I have set to text wrap and detect edges, so that it finds the transparent edge of that image and it wraps the text around there. I've also threaded this text frame through to the back page so that the story continues here, and I've put in my pull quote. Okay, so this is not a video where I'm going to have time to explain to you exactly how to do all of these things, like threading text, like creating the drop cap for the pull quote, and all of those other things. It's really intended to give you a quick start on how to use InDesign to create a simple brochure. So from this point, once I've finished my brochure and I'm happy with it, the best way for you to archive your work and to keep it in one place is to choose packaging. So I'm going to go to File, Package, and this document hasn't been properly pre-flighted, but because it's a simple document there shouldn't be any problems with it. I'll press Package. This is where I can set instructions to the printer. I'm just going to press Continue, and then I'm going to put it on my desktop, and I'll just call it Inked for Print. Okay, and that's the folder where everything's going to go. Press Package. I get a little font warning that I need to make sure my fonts are licensed. Press OK, and it packages everything. So if I now bring that folder in here, whoops, you'll see that there's a folder. When I go inside there, there's fonts, any fonts that I've used, and links, any links that I've used, and my InDesign file and my IDML file for backward compatibility. So everything's packaged nicely. So if I take this folder to another computer and open up this document in InDesign, everything will be there. Okay, so I hope this has helped you get to grips with the basic processes in InDesign. Of course, you need to dig deeper and you need to practice with things like formatting text and working with objects, but this should give you a good basic introduction. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and see you next time.